John Blanche, illustrator with 40 years in the gaming and miniatures industry, and now drawing illustrations for myself in my spare time. I've drawn pictures since the age of 3. I remember being a small child drawing on rolls of wallpaper, and it would always be my version of Roman soldiers fighting Viking soldiers fighting dinosaurs. It's an organic process. I didn't know what I was going to do after art school. I really didn't. I was very naive, so I didn't worry about it too much. I went to visit places that sold art and agents, and I got a few jobs illustrating book jacket covers, and I think my big break came illustrating for the Tolkien bestiary. Well, working on the Tolkien bestiary was kind of easy, really, because I was well read with the works of Tolkien, and the publishers were very good at providing briefs and fit paintings too. In fact, it was doing that project I first met Ian Miller. I bumped into him into a lift going up to the agents, and I knew exactly who he was, and I'd never seen him or met him in my life. So that was strange, it was weird. But we became friends ever since, and it's all true. The difference between illustration and art is something you know almost immediately, but there are grey areas where it does cross over. Some paintings can be used as illustration, and some illustration is perceived as being art, and certainly can be in art galleries. I mean, most illustration is done for commercial publication. What I draw I consider to be illustration, but none of it's for commercial application at all. But I see it as a series. So when I draw one picture, it's like seeing a whole book, and I can't just leave it at one. I have to produce a whole world-building event. And I think my tastes in the last decade or two is what I perceive as being matured. And I certainly like a lot of Victorian art, and I like Victorian illustration as well, and Edwardian illustration. So it's kind of a mixture, really, and the boundaries are fluid. When I start, I know what I want to achieve, but I don't know how I'm going to do that. I don't know what it's going to look like. It's a fascinating thing. I try to watch it happening, and sometimes that the surface texture of the cartridge paper I used to draw on has its own weft and weave almost, and if I draw very, very lightly on it, then I can follow these shapes. And you can't see these shapes when you look at the paper because it is essentially just white paper. But if you just sit at my desk for hours and hours and hours, I can follow the rhythms of the paper itself. And the drawing grows in front of me. It's a fascinating process. You know, I absolutely love that. Sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't work so well, but that's part of the journey. Sorcery Fighting Fantasy series, it wasn't considered, and I didn't think the process through. I just drew. So I'm drawing for my inner soul anyway, because the stuff's just naturally coming out of me. Yeah, it's sorcery. Yeah, it is dystopia. I was, at the time, and it's a long time ago now, I was unaware of any deep-seated coherence in the imagery. I just drew. I just drew really fast, and it's all about trying to earn a wage. And never analysed it, never analysed myself, my own motives, never knew where anything came from. I wasn't a very well-read person. I wasn't very well educated. I came out of a very poor background. So I don't know. I think that darkness sort of lives inside of me naturally. But the one thing I can say, that when I was a child, I was frightened of everything. And I remember speaking about the film Fantasia. I was probably about 6 when I saw that. My mother took me to the cinema to see it, and we were watching the witches flying around the Bear Mountain. I was terrified. Yeah, I took it on as being, that's real, that's really happening. And it's dark and it's mysterious, and I need to hide away from it. Skeletons. Skeletons are terrifying. I love them though. Skulls everywhere. Face my fears. 'To have some kids frightened of my art is certainly not my intention, but I think I tap in to the same kind of fears and darkness I had as a child. To younger people today seeing it, I'm tapping into the same mental things. So it's probably worse these days. We've got a war in Ukraine. I wasn't aware of any wars when I was younger, but there must have been some somewhere, as there always are. the perception of the Blanchitsu style does refer to me, and I think the Blanchitsu, well, Rick Priestley came up with the name Blanchitsu because he always said my style of painting miniatures was very Oriental-like. It was almost like mystical. You know, I'd insist on having things exactly the right way. But in later years, we did the Blanchitsu articles, and my taste in painted miniatures followed a brand of making the miniature look more realistic on the tabletop rather than have a pristine, classical, academy-style miniature, but units working on a table, skirmish games working on a table. So that is one strand of the Blanchitsu style. Another strand of it is to paint everything fast and dirty. And I think there's a lot of people look at the Blanchitsu style, they misread it. They think it's all fast and not very accomplished. But if you look at what I consider to be Blanchitsu miniatures, they're extraordinarily accomplished. You know, looking at some of my favourite miniature painters, they're just too many to mention. But I'm left in sheer awe of them. I think I've got a few lying around here, wherever they've gone. Chaps in the bell jar or miniatures from friends. And if you look at those closely, you'll see how realistic they look in terms of limited palette. When you've got soldiers running around battlefields, they haven't got pristine, brightly coloured clothes on. Yeah, they're all grubby and muddy and a bit worn, a bit worn out. And yeah, that's the way life should be. Worn out like me. It was a painting I did for my own amusement one weekend, and at the time I was finding a lot of female depictions in art had a really bad reputation, and it was getting a load of stick. It's pre-internet days, but so I wanted to paint a female figure that wasn't naked, didn't have big boobs, and didn't have that, what I thought of as a quintessentially American view. Why would barbarian ladies run about the fields of death with bikinis on? That doesn't make sense to me. But the Amazonian Gothic was not just a portrayal of it was heavily stylised, the female form. Sort of artists like Urte and other fashion illustrators come into mind. It was also an exercise in geometric forms. So you have the rectangle of the picture, and then the figure makes a triangle, and a sun behind her is a circle. So it's a triangle on a circle on a rectangle. And that's what it was. It's an artistic exercise. This is about as intellectual as I get. Yes, the chaos is inside of me. I don't have a perception of an audience in any way whatsoever. I draw these pictures for my own gratification and amusement, and they are journeys into another dimension. And people can come along and be excited by what I draw, or people can just ignore it. It really, really doesn't matter to me in the slightest. So it is a very personal thing. I regard my illustrations as being windows into another universe that people can come along, look into, and journey in those same places, or not, as they choose to. Well, you say counterculture, that's something that's followed me all my life, defined my career. Back in the late 60s, we all had long hair. Well, I'll say we, I was a small cadre in Nottingham who grew the hair long, and I had friends that journeyed to India. I painted pictures, and we felt separate from normal society, and we would call ordinary people straights. We called ourselves freaks or heads, and it was an exciting time. It was a dangerous time because nobody liked what was called by the population hippies. You know, and I certainly did. I got thumped when I was riding my bicycle because I got long hair once. Chap ran out of a pub and landed one on my head. Very nice. We were peaceful. The population of Nottingham weren't. Yes, so as I said before, it's a very working class environment, and working class culture tends to follow more violent aspects of life. So there's a lot of people I knew of who went to football matches, who would fight, just behave abominably. So I went from having long hair. We arrived at the late 70s. I helped Roger Dean, him of the Yes covers, put up an exhibition in the ICA in London. And I first saw punk bands, which was very exciting. And the chap I with became a punk DJ. So I used to go down the clubs with him and meet all the young punks of the day. I was in my 30s by then, but again, counterculture, very exciting. Yeah, I think the thread of my art has certainly influenced a lot of people, and people take it further. They express it in different ways, and that's fine. I don't really think about it. You know, I draw my pictures. I'm opening a window on another world, a world I call Voodoo Forest, and it contains lots of mad characters and mad events, but they're all seated in real life, or supposed real life. Like there's a lot of fairy tales in these pictures, and there's lots of references to Macbeth, which is Shakespeare. That could be considered to be a fairy tale. It's stuff that has always excited me and influenced me throughout my career. It's like moulding it into a single thing called Voodoo Forest, and that's what all this art is about, really. I started about 10 years ago doing this stuff, but it was 10 years ago. It was just restricted to Sunday afternoons because that's all the time I had. Now I've got a lot more time, so I can produce a lot more art. And I don't think about it. I don't analyse it. It's just something that happens. It comes out of my soul, really. It is very personal, yes. I'm tending to use the motifs that puzzled me as a child, frightened me as a child, stuff that stayed with me all my life. And I think the symbolism in medieval art is something that fascinates me. So I add things which look like they mean something. So there could be a symbol for something of a far greater and deeper meaning. Yet they're not. They're just there as images. Like, there's lots of pictures of his eggs in. That's weird, isn't it? What's eggs all about? I don't know. I like egg sandwiches. Hobby horses, teddy bears. They all come from my childhood, really. As do skulls, weird trees. Hussars, I love hussars. So I like big furry hats. When other people appreciate my art and talk about the influence it's had on them, I feel greatly humbled. And to know that what I draw, which is an extension of my interior personality, has an effect on somebody else who I don't know. I mean, that's astonishing, and I feel very grateful for such praise when I get it. I certainly don't seek it. I think art is a very personal thing. It's a very laborious thing, and I don't draw for other people's edification. But when it obviously gets that, it makes me feel all nice. So there's been a few people who seem to understand what I'm doing. Young chaps, I get very snotty with them when they copy me or seemingly take my ideas, because they should get their own, really. Should explore their own interior personalities rather than trying to be me. Go off and be themselves. So there's a few young people around that do stuff that could be worthy of it, and it takes many years to get to what I'd consider to be a professional standard. It's hard work and takes a very, very long time. And most science fiction fantasy artists nowadays, the really, really good ones, amazing abilities, they seem to do something different to me. Perhaps it's the commercial thing. Yeah, they're chasing money to live. I'm just chasing this because it's a voyage of discovery.